so you have to be able to lead within your own personality. And so we talk a lot about that. We'll have some loud leaders on the field, and we'll have quiet leaders. And that's just like everybody. Everybody's got to find what their strengths are and use it within their personality and not try to be someone else. And that's what I've tried as with my coach, is to try and remember to coach within my own personality, which is a little more quiet, a little bit more reserved, a little bit more behind the scene. I like to blend in. When I first started, officials used to go up to my assistant coach and think he was always the head coach, because I was one of very few women coaches, head coaches back in the day. And so that continued for quite a while. But I lead within my personality. I've tried at different times to do it like different people that I see that I really respect. Diljit, you know, she's a very outgoing, very loud, very enthusiastic, and she's had so much success. But she's a very different personality than I am, and so I have to be able to lead within my own personality. And I think that's something I also share with our players is don't be someone else. Be who you are. Be true to yourself, because God made you that way, and embrace your own uniqueness.
As many of you know, I had the opportunity to attend the 2025 BYU Cruise. This was a fully chartered cruise ship with 3,500 BYU fans. I was there, and it was remarkable. We did several Leading Saints experiences on board, did some presentations, workshops, and then did 2 live recordings of the podcast. And I'm here to share with you one of those podcast recordings that I did with Jennifer Rockwood, who is the head coach of the BYU women's soccer team. She has been doing this for decades, has all sorts of accolades, definitely a successful coach in the NCAA. And I love, I interviewed Diljit Taylor a few years ago, and I just love this dynamic of understanding how these women's coaches coach women. And, in church leadership, whether it's YSA awards or, just leading adults in general, we can learn so much from their experience. So listen in this interview for her emphasis on how she really encourages the girls to be who they are as far as the type of leaders. You don't have to act like or be like the previous captains of the team, but to really stand out and be those leaders. How does she deal with drama that comes up in a team setting from time to time? And then establishing team culture. How does she get ahead of culture, even to the beginning of recruiting players to her team? I thought it was fascinating that she does not interface with parents of these college students. Obviously, they're adults, so they can, talk for themselves and speak for themselves. But really fascinating just how from the beginning of the recruiting process, she begins to lay the foundation of really healthy culture, which no doubt has led to the success that she has had. So you're going to love it. I put up a camera and plugged into the mic system there, so it's maybe not the best quality that we have on Leading Saints podcast, but you'll get the message nonetheless. The quality is there in the content. So here's my interview with Coach Jennifer Rockwood. Who in here has no idea what Leading Saints is? Raise your hand. Neither does Jennifer. This is where we record live therapy sessions, and no, I'm just kidding.
I could use that right now.
So Leading Saints, we are most people know us as a podcast, and we've been going for about 10 years as a podcast. And we're a nonprofit organization similar to, we work closely with the church, just like Scripture Central or Faith Matters, who they sort of have their own podcasts as well. And we deep dive into the content about leadership. And, I'll interview a bishop in Spain or a Relief Society president in Australia or an Elders Quorum president in Magna, wherever, and just ask, how is it you lead? And so I thought it would be fun to find some individuals in the BYU world who have some leadership experience, obviously as a coach or elsewhere. And I said I got top 2. One is Kalani Sataki, so I'm gunning for him tomorrow. And 2 was actually Jennifer Rockwood. So
well, thank you.
Yeah. So you weren't just the well, this is the best we can got. No, we want to hear from Jennifer Rockwood. So, and maybe for those who aren't familiar with you and your background, how do you explain, like people ask you, what do you do for work? What do you say?
So I'm just a soccer coach. And then they'll say, where do you coach? And I said, I'm at BYU. And how long have you been there? Pretty much my whole life, since I was 18 years old. So I've had a very unique journey coaching. I got into coaching without really expecting to do that. Certainly never expected to do it as a career. I was a business finance major at BYU, expecting to go a very different path. But I think this is the path that God wanted me to go down. I fought it a lot. But it's obviously been an amazing journey, and it's gone fast, for sure.
Have you always been a competitor, like at a young age? I mean, what do you remember about those early days of being a competitor?
Well, I'm the oldest of 4 other brothers, and I feel like I was bossy from the very beginning. Nice. With 4 boys around. I was always involved in athletics. It's just something that came natural to me. I was born actually in Provo, but raised in Lake Oswego, Oregon, right outside of Portland, and had opportunity even back in those early years to play in girls' sports. I did softball, I did basketball, I did soccer, and I did track and field. I was a 4-sport athlete in high school. So yes, you could say I was a little competitive, and was able to excel. Back in the day, those days you could do 4 sports. It seems like now to get to the elite level, you have to start at a very early age and focus on one sport. So I got to do all of them.
That's cool. Yeah. That's awesome. And then, so you played, maybe, what were your playing years like at BYU?
Well, I remember my first impression when I came. I went out to practice or tryouts and saw my team and thought, wow, my 7th and 8th grade soccer team could have beat these guys. Not a lot of experience. Soccer in Utah wasn't even in the high schools officially yet.
Oh, wow.
So I had come from Oregon where it was pretty developed and pretty competitive. And so a lot of these girls hadn't played a lot of soccer. So the competition wasn't super great, but ultimately became my best friends. And loved my experience as a teammate, and actually ended up coaching that group the very next year I graduated.
Wow. Was that, I mean, what's the story behind that? Did that come out of nowhere?
Well, we were a club team, and so no one really cared about us except for us.
Is that what the club team means, right?
That's what a club team, especially back then. The club teams are taken much better care of at this time, but back then, no one knew who we were.
So
I had to go find my own friend to coach us my senior year.
Really? Oh, no.
That's kind of.
And so club teams, there's no scholarships that are offered?
No,
I mean, what
there's no gear. There's nothing, really.
You have to go
they gave us a
fundraise for it?
field. Back then, it wasn't even fundraising. We had to pay.
Oh, wow.
Kind of pay to play, pay for our uniforms and our own gear. And we had a field, and obviously they bought a jersey for us. But other than that, it was kind of all of us. So.
Wow.
But great times, and there was hopes and rumblings with Title IX coming around that there might be a women's sport added at some point. So, but we were just there having fun, playing, and obviously being a student.
So you were graduated, and there's nobody else to. You recruited a friend to coach before, so you thought, well, I guess it's my turn.
My senior year I was involved a lot in the scheduling and the logistics of traveling and helping our club team. Like I said, I went and got my friend to coach us my senior year, but he didn't want to do any of the other stuff, and so I kind of got involved in that. So I think BYU knew kind of who I was because I was doing that a little bit, and then the extramural director, as I was getting ready to graduate. Obviously, my friend wasn't going to coach there after I left, but they asked if I wanted to continue coaching. And at that time, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I had an opportunity to coach at a private school. I started my first high school coach. It was Waterford. Waterford is now in Sandy, Utah. It's a private school. It was originally down in Provo. But I coached a year there, and so I felt a little comfortable because I'd at least coached high school for 1 year, and said, sure, let's do it. So I got a job teaching at that same private school, and that's what kept me in Provo after I graduated. Nice. Thought I'd try it for a few years and see what would happen.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you expect it to last as long as it has?
No, I was the only teacher teaching at this private school that didn't have teaching credentials.
Oh, okay.
So I felt maybe there was some unique reason I was supposed to be there. I taught world history, I taught algebra, I taught some PE, and I coached the boys and girls high school
really?
teams. I used to travel around in a van with 14 high school boys on our way to a 15-passenger van, obviously me driving to our different games. So just a unique road and pathway, unlike most people's today.
So let's back up even again further as far as how would you describe your faith development in your growing up years and your family and all that?
Yeah, well, I was born and raised in the church, and so my mom, who's with me on the cruise today,
Cool.
She's probably going to be sad that she's not here right now because I wasn't sure what I was doing. I just left like 10 minutes ago and I said, I got to go do something.
Yeah.
But I was actually born while my parents were students at BYU, so I always say I'm a true blue cougar,
Yeah,
born in
for
Provo. Sure. When I went in first grade, my dad took a job in Portland, and we moved out there, so I went to school out there and raised out there, and the church obviously was a big part of our lives, a big part of our social lives. And then I had always wanted to go to BYU just because my parents went there, and obviously the church values, and I didn't have a lot of good LDS friends, and I thought how great it would be to go and be around a lot of other, members of the church. And so obviously I wanted to go there. I actually wanted to play basketball at BYU, but I wasn't quite good enough, I think. It's too short to be a power forward. That was my goal. So, and I had some opportunities to play soccer at other schools, but just really felt BYU was the place I wanted to go.
Yeah.
I ended up going to Rick's actually and played basketball for a year, and then decided that was a little too cold for me, and I miss soccer. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
So in those beginning years of coaching, not only were you not a credentialed teacher, but you didn't go to coaching school either, right? But, so you're just picking up from your past coaches. What do you remember from those early years of just trying to figure out how to lead or coach in that context?
Yeah, probably the most influential coach for me was my high school soccer coach. And I think the thing that I really learned from him is we all wanted to do our best for him. He was very a part of what we did. He was very encouraging, but he also held us to a high standard. And he would call us out if we were not meeting that standard. He challenged us to do more than we thought we could on our own. And I think that's something that has stuck with me is as a player and as an athlete, I wanted someone to challenge me. I wanted someone to push me. I wanted to perform for someone to kind of prove myself and to help me reach my potential, I guess you could say. And so he was someone that I think I learned a lot from. I also did soccer camps for him in high school all summer. And it's funny, when I started taking over the soccer camps at BYU, we run about 3,000 kids through our camps right now, one of the biggest college camps in the country. I basically did what I did as a 15-year-old for him.
Oh, wow.
And started out that way. So, I think that competitors want to be pushed. I think they want to be held accountable. I think they want to be loved. I think they want to feel like they're cared about and that you're vested in them and that you want them, even though it's hard and challenging, to rise to higher than they think they could do on their own.
Yeah. Do you remember what specifically that coach did? Was it the encouragement from the sidelines? Was it one-to-one interactions, formal, informal? How would you articulate how he actually did that so that you wanted to perform at your highest level for him?
I think it was a little bit of both, of all those things that you just said. I remember specifically talking to him. I played a lot as a freshman on the varsity team, but we had this unbelievable All-American player who was getting ready to graduate. And he came to me and he said, next year, I plan on you playing in that position. And so here are the things that you're going to need to do over the summer to get ready to do that. And so I think that inspired me, that he came to me and he believed in me and he felt that I could fill that role, and then gave me some specific things that I needed to do to get better in order to rise to that challenge. That's something that I really remember, and I spent a lot of hours in the summer in my backyard, in my bathing suit, with the water sprinklers on, with the radio on, working on my technical soccer skills. Yeah.
Interesting, because he really said you've got potential, like this is where you'll be.
Yeah, and I
So,
felt like he believed in me and kind of signaled me out to like, look, you're capable of this, but you need to do these 3-4 things in order to get there. If you don't do them, you're not gonna make it. And so I think all of us need people who believe in us. And when we feel like someone really believes in us, we will do that much more in the direction that they're guiding us.
Yeah. Is there anything else that coach said that comes to mind would be worth mentioning?
I think he was someone that he knew how to pull the best out of us. He knew the fine line between having fun with our team, but yet also it's time to get to work. This is serious stuff. Let's get it done. And kind of the fine line of we have a lot of fun. Girls play a lot better when they're having fun and when they're with their friends and when they're feeling confident. And so I think he kind of hovered over that line of really getting on us, but yet also having a lot of fun with us.
Yeah. And I imagine you do the same with your
try.
team.
We do have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun, very personable girls, but we work very, very hard.
Yeah, that's awesome. So at this point in your career and as coaching, just from a general faith perspective and even from a parent perspective, I'm sure many in this room have young single adults and we're worried about them, like how do we keep them engaged in, worthwhile efforts, whether it's sports, school, or faith? What can you teach us just about that YSA demographic in the church? Like, what have you learned from your perspective that would be helpful?
Well, I have the opportunity to work with some unbelievable young women in the church. For my 29 years, all of the members of our women's soccer team were members of the church. We've been able, one of the few teams, maybe the only team at BYU that has played at the highest national level, competitively with all members.
Wow.
And so was my goal starting off, was to find the top LDS kids in the country and develop them and make them believe that we can compete against anybody. And that's something we have achieved. We just this last year had our first couple non-members on the team that had unique connections to BYU. So I do get to recruit the best of the best. And from what I've seen from them, they are very just go-getters and discipline-minded. And I think sports provides so many great learning opportunities for young kids. So I encourage parents and leaders and kids to find something they love to do and really get involved in it, whether it's music, whether it's theater, whether it's sports. But I think at the young age, they need to have a connection to something that they love doing. It provides a social opportunity for them. It allows them opportunities to succeed but yet fail. I think so much now kids don't know how to react when things don't go well for them.
Yeah.
They've been kind of protected. And I have to deal with that a lot because my girls have never sat a minute on the bench in their lives. And when they come to BYU and they're not a starter and they're not a significant player right away, that's a big challenge for them. And that's something we have to work through. But I think even younger kids getting involved in something that they love, where they have a connection with a group or a community that they can find some confidence in. I think so often kids don't believe in themselves enough, and they're not being told enough how special they are and how unique they are and how much they're loved and how much potential they have. At camp, we talk a lot about, you have more than you ever think you do. And don't we all? We're all blessed more than we ever think. And it's sometimes in our lives we forget that so often. But just finding a connection in a group of friends that can help you set goals, benchmarks for achievement, and learn that it doesn't always work out for you and the world's not fair and it's okay and we can move past that. There's seems to be almost a victim mentality where people are finding excuses of why they're not doing this or why they're not successful here, as opposed to just, okay, some things I can't control. What can I control? and what can I learn to move past this tough experience? And in our sport, that happens all the time. Even personally as a coach, I can win a big game. We can win a huge game, and I can think, wow, okay, I figured it out. I'm a good coach. I know what I'm doing. And the very next game, the girls don't look prepared. They don't show up. They don't look confident. And then you're thinking, oh, my goodness, I'm the worst coach. And so if someone like me who's experienced a lot of success still feels like that, I can only imagine what young kids and other people who haven't yet experienced that success, how they still struggle to kind of find their identity. And that's kind of what life is all about. But particularly with the youth of the church right now, it's hard because it's a hard world out there. There's a lot more things out there and a lot more challenges that they have to face. And I think they're trying to find their identity. And I think they just need to know that there's certain people out there who believe in them and that can tell them that they're enough. And let's find something they love to do to get them engaged and get them active. Too often, I think our youth are staying at home and just not doing anything, and therefore they're not engaging in real life social scenarios.
Yeah, and like you said, sporting is a great sort of container for them to experience a lot of these, failure or, just struggle that they'll face in life, but it's more controlled and they can get used to it.
Yes, because, there's always things that we don't. That's something we talk about on our team a lot. You can't control so much of what happens in a competition.
Yeah.
For us, we can't control the weather, but that could have a big impact on the game. And so just being very intent in what we do and how we do it and how we approach it. And those are lessons that can be learned in these different activities. I've seen my different nieces and nephews grow, and they're not all in sports, but they're in music. They're participating in the community theater. They're getting involved in a lot of other things that are giving them these awesome opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm curious, like you mentioned, you were a four-sport athlete, and now times have changed a little bit. And I have a 13-year-old daughter who loves soccer, and suddenly we're like traveling to these places. It becomes like this, so it can be really expensive and really intense, and even to the point where we almost sometimes it's like we don't have time for that Wednesday night activity with the the young men, young women. We got to go to practice or these things. Is there any advice you have of navigating all that in 2025? I mean, how are you seeing your girls come out of that?
Well, all of my girls played very competitively, probably starting from U8. I've known some of my girls. Ellie Walbrook, my captain, she's here. I first saw her at our soccer academy when she was 5 years old.
Oh, really? Wow.
So a lot of these girls start very competitively, kind of at the U8, U9 level. And their parents obviously have to be very, very involved too. And so as they get older, they're traveling a lot. Usually about U14, they start, just like in all the other sports, they're going to tournaments. I see the Utah teams in Florida one weekend, and a few more weekends I see them in Dallas, and then I see them in Southern California. So they are missing a lot of church activities, and I think that just has to come a lot from the parents. I know a lot of our parents, wherever they traveled, tried to find a Sunday service to try and keep them involved that way, but a lot of that will come down to the family helping them navigate so much of what they're missing. And I had to do that to an extent, but I know most of my girls have stayed, very active, but yet haven't been able to be involved as much with the actual church things.
Yeah. What would you say as far as, this is a little selfish question, but as I'm like engaging with my daughter, who she's excited about soccer, she wants to perform well, I want to push her, like you talked about these dynamics with your coach, but I also don't want to be the dad that's like pushing her too much, right?
Yeah.
And what advice would you have?
And that's hard. I think parents don't realize how much they impact their children's performance and the pressure, the additional pressure that they feel from their parents. I have girls on my team right now who I just want to say, parents, just back off, let them go. They already feel so much pressure. I feel like my job a lot of the time is trying to take the pressure that they feel off the table, because I think they put so much pressure on themselves. They feel automatic pressure from me, and so I have to try and help lift the pressure from them. And so if we work really hard through a week and have a game and have some success, all it takes is a parent, like, why didn't you play more? Why is Jen doing this? Why didn't you make that goal? Or what were you thinking? And so I think so much of that is that added pressure is a problem We talk a lot about 3-to-1s. Work on the 3 positive things that happened to you that were your strengths in a particular practice or game, and 1 thing that you need to work on. And so I would say to parents and to leaders, find the good first. Find what they did well. Praise them for that. And then say, but you could probably do this a little better. And so really finding the positive. It's so easy to be negative. It's so easy to tear people down. It's so easy for parents to talk badly about other parents and other players. And so you have to be careful about how you talk in front of your kids, because they develop habits after that. I hear a lot of parents on the sidelines, and I'm like, wow, you guys, you can't talk like that to other kids and to other parents. I think so, trying to set that example for them and helping them understand that, you can't control what other people say, but you can control what you say, you can control how you act, you can control how you treat other people. This kind of goes back to the golden rule and everything that we're taught within the church.
Yeah. Anything you could teach us about the dynamic, the parent-coach relationship? I mean, I maybe I'm assuming too much, but I guess on your level, people are like, actually, I think Jennifer's got it. Like, she's on elite level. But, on Little League, it's like, hey, why aren't you playing my girl? Like, what's the problem?
Or, I'm fortunate. I've learned over the years that it's best to keep parents this distance away, right? And we have fantastic parents, but I think you just don't want to open kind of those doors. And I think parents are very involved in youth and high school sports, maybe a little more than they ought to be. But I understand there's always situations where, things need to be addressed. But I found early on in recruiting especially, and I am old school, and I don't involve the parents a lot in the recruiting because I'm not going to be with the parents. I'm going to be with the athletes. So that is one of the first things I'll talk about when we start recruiting is I don't engage too much in the parents. Obviously, the parents are a huge part of their child's decision. But for me, I try to stress, I just am going to deal with mostly the kid. So I don't talk to a lot of parents. I encourage our parents travel with us. They're with us all the time. And we encourage that, but I don't talk soccer with them. And I think that's an important way for us as coaches to be able to not be, involved with that too much, because it's challenging enough to juggle 30 young women who are very competitive and trying to get the best out of them.
Yeah. So is that something you clearly articulate to the parents, that I'm not going to deal with you, or don't text me, don't call me type thing?
Well, there was a point when I kind of did. You have the parents meeting before the season, and I think now, because I've been doing it a while, I think it's passed on. I think parents just know. Well, don't try and go tell Jen anything about your daughter, because that's not really how things work around here. So I feel like I have a real good relationship with the parents, but I think that's just been kind of passed on. So. I'm not getting calls from parents. I'm not getting emails from parents. So I'm fortunate that way, but I think that's just the way I've kind of managed my teams over the years.
Yeah, and I think in leadership, leadership is simply establishing culture, and you've set a culture of this is how it functions here, and so that gets around, and that saves you a lot of time because you don't have to...
Absolutely. You don't have to keep showing the culture, and that's what's so important about building a team and building your leaders on the team. And that's, I think, been a big part of our success. Culture is something we do have control over, and we work very hard at. It's always been one of our biggest strengths as a program. We don't always have supposedly the best recruiting class on paper, but we have the best kids that are the right fit for BYU, and I feel like we get the most out of them because they're there at BYU for all the right reasons, not just because of soccer. I feel like soccer's the bonus on top, and that's kind of our culture. Now, obviously, with how the NCAA and NIL is changing significant these past 3 years, it is changing a little bit in the landscape. I'm doing my best to kind of fight for our same culture and remain true to what we've always done, because it's helped us be successful.
Yeah. So maybe walk us through, first establishing that culture, as far as your recruiting approach. Do you have a pitch to the young women, or how do you go about just setting that standard and establishing culture from the very beginning of recruiting?
Yeah, I think it first starts for us within our camps. I think you could look at any of our girls, and they all came to our soccer camps. So that's the first introduction to our program and coaches and players.
And that's as young as 5, you said?
That's as young as Cub Camp. I have a couple girls on my team that I have pictures with them, with Cosmo at 6 and 7 years old at Cub Camps. And so for us, it starts young. Just like, Richie Saunders, right? His story of how his dad played basketball with him, and he always dreamed of playing at BYU. I feel like that is the pathway of a lot of my players. They're members of the church. They've been watching our games. They've been to our camps. They just have that dream of being a part because we've had such great players and role models that have worked with them. They do most of our recruiting. I feel like it's not necessarily me as much as the culture I create with our players, and our players then pass that on to the little campers, and the little campers then dream to be like them and want to come play for BYU. And that's something that we've established from the very beginning. But that's where I feel our recruiting starts. Just like I think it does at most all the other programs at BYU is that dream of someday representing BYU, because we have this unique niche, and unique in such a good way, and a good draw from any other school out there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Anything else just about team culture, as far as how you establish that on an ongoing basis, or routines, things like that?
I think the thing we talk a lot about it, you can't have culture if you don't have love, and if you don't have respect, and if you don't have a genuine connection with a teammate or an associate away from what you're doing in the grind of things. And so that's where the fun, that's where the social part comes out, as getting to know each other off the field. So doing different activities, and just being together. That's something we talk a lot to our older kids. Grab the younger kids, make them feel, as part of the group, make them feel like they have a voice. And then that leadership is passed on, because those girls were given that same leadership from the older girls when they first came. So I think just that community of love, and we're all in this together. We're doing it for each other. We're all in. We're all committed. We're all going to do the things that we are hard, that we maybe don't want to do, but we know it's going to make us successful because of what's been done in the past.
Yeah.
And so much of that is working with the girls, and you different personalities, different backgrounds, but all coming together. You can see it as a coach, and they train and how they play, if they're connected or if they're not. And especially in today's world of social media, and you've got some players who are highlighted more than others. It's a bit of a challenge. I think back to, some people know about Ashley Hatch. Ashley Hatch was someone who developed a big name within our program, but yet she was the hardest worker, one of the kindest people. She led by example. She wasn't a rah-rah kind of person. She was like, let's go out there, compete, and have fun. And, so you have to be able to lead within your own personality. And so we talk a lot about that. We'll have some loud leaders on the field, and we'll have quiet leaders. And that's just like everybody. Everybody's got to find what their strengths are and use it within their personality, and not try to be someone else. Yeah. And that's what I've tried as with my coaches, to try and remember to coach within my own personality, which is a little more quiet, a little bit more reserved, a little bit more behind the scene. I like to blend in. When I first started, officials used to go up to my assistant coach and think he was always the head coach, because I was one of very few women coaches, head coaches back in the day. And so that continued for quite a while. But I lead within my personality. I've tried at different times to do it like different people that I see that I really respect. Diljit, she's a very outgoing, very loud, very enthusiastic, and she's had so much success. But she's a very different personality than I am, and so I have to be able to lead within my own personality. And I think that's something I also share with our players is, don't be someone else. Be who you are. Be true to yourself, because God made you that way. And embrace your own uniqueness, I guess you could say.
It's so powerful, especially in a church context, when that outgoing Relief Society president that has it all together gets released and you're called to replace, suddenly you're like, I'm not her. Like, well, you were never supposed to be her, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can remember very clearly a conversation with a new captain. We had this unbelievable senior who led our team, and she ended up being assistant for me for years, and actually our mental strength coach, Maddie Gates, for so long. But I remember specifically the next two girls who had to be the captains after her were just in a panic because they were nothing like her. One was very quiet. One was even a little louder than Maddie. And I just said, look, you're not Maddie. You never were meant to be her. You got to find how to lead within yourself. Yeah. And it was fun helping them and watching them grow and find the ways they could lead. They led our team that very next year to finishing 4th in the nation out of 360 teams. So those are some of the journeys that I get to be a part of, which are really fun.
Yeah, that's cool. How do you approach it when you see a girl on your team who's maybe just taken out, whether it's in practice or in a game, and you just feel like they're struggling? How do you approach that situation, that individual, and help them?
It's a little tricky, and everybody's different. Some people can handle some more direct feedback. Some, when you give them that, think that, oh, Jen doesn't believe in me anymore. She doesn't like me anymore. And so you have to be careful about that. So sometimes you kind of let things ride out and see if they can pull themselves out of it. And if they can't, then you pull them in and try to say, hey, what's going on? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What can I do for you? And try and reassure them. A lot of times as a coach, it's hard to reassure and to build confidence if they're not starting, if they're not playing. And so you have to help them understand their role on the team maybe isn't what they want it to be, but it's still very crucial. It's still very important because we all play a part, and we're all going to win games together. We're going to lose games together. So how can they use their skill set to impact the team, whether it might just be at practice or maybe it's just cheering at the game. And that's very hard for them, and that takes a journey for them too. And a lot of times tell stories about girls who had been in their similar situations, what they did, and how they ended up getting to be where they wanted to be.
Yeah. Do you have a routine do you meet with each girl one-on-one on a routine basis, or is it more informal, or walks to the field? Or
yeah, I've done it different ways throughout the years. I think sometimes, as coaches, and I'm sure as parents, you have a conversation and you think it all went well, and then you realize that they didn't have the same conversation that you thought that you had. They took it a whole different way. And a lot of times it's not what you were trying to portray. So I also feel that sometimes it's the more informal contacts that you have at practice that are a little bit more impactful than the full sit-downs. And so we try and obviously do both. I try and do both. We talk to them a lot before the season and in the middle of the season. And we don't have a lot of wrap-up meetings unless they want to come in. And I've just found that it just kind of works a little bit better that way. I know it's very different from other coaches, but I think the more informal touching base with the players potentially has more of an impact in a positive way for them. Yeah.
What about just as humans do, especially young minds that are still maturing, sometimes there's some infighting, or, she did that, I don't like her anymore. And unity is such an important part of a team sport, right? So do you see a lot of infighting, or how do you approach that, or?
Well, I work with 18 to 21-year-old girls, women.
All right.
And yes, as we know, there is a lot of drama. I'm very fortunate because of the quality of young women that I recruit. A lot of the drama that coaches at other schools have to deal with, I don't see as much of it. Again, that's a big strength for us because of their commitment to BYU and all trying to be good examples. But yeah, there's definitely times when personalities don't match and they clash, and that's expected in especially high-level competition. And I think that's where they have to learn to know each other outside of the competitive field. They have to understand, know the background, know the personality. And there's just times when you have to have a talk with someone. It's like, look, that's just how she is. You can't be surprised by her reaction. You can't change people's reaction. You have to learn to adapt. So when you're talking to your captains and to your leaders, you have to understand what motivates each player, because every player is motivated differently. Every player reacts to different feedback differently, and that's part of getting to know someone and love them for all of their character traits, not just because they're on the team. And I think that's a really good life lesson as you go on socially, meeting other people, is being able to be, able to work with any type of personality, and because you face and see all types.
Yeah. That's powerful. Anybody? I usually don't have a live studio audience here, so anybody in the room have a question for Jennifer? All right, let's go here, Mr. Radio Voice, right?
I was just wondering if the NIL is playing a part in it as you go along with, even with the soccer.
Yeah, it is. I think it's, obviously it's huge now at the football and men's basketball, and really now into women's basketball, but you're seeing it creep in a little bit to the Olympic sports and our sport. I last year had an opportunity with some big supporters within the collective to do a team NIL. So I chose, instead of giving a few players a lot of money, I also had a very young team, so I didn't have some major stars super, kind of at that level yet. Decided to do more of a team NIL, where I was helping all of my athletes get a little bit more help on top of their scholarship. And so that's kind of just something how I believed in, rewarding our juniors and seniors a little bit more than our freshmen, just kind of those who had been in the program and had given more to the program. So kind of opposite of what an NIL is, which is giving money to players up front before they've done anything. I was trying to reward players on the back end, which is what I've kind of always tried to do with our scholarships. This year is going to be a little different with the changes now, where everything's in-house with revenue share. So I'm hoping that I'll still be able to at least help my players out at the level I was to last year. And then maybe as we start getting more experienced players and they start becoming all conference, all region, all Americans, that I will have that opportunity through some revenue share to help support them.
Great question. Any other questions? I took all the good ones. All right, let's go right here.
Would you talk a little bit about the transition into the Big 12 and what that was like?
Yeah. So this is the fourth conference that I've coached in. We started out in the WAC, and then obviously the Mountain West, and then the WCC, which actually was considered a women's soccer powerhouse conference. So we went in with Santa Clara and Portland, who had both won national championships, and I think combined had been to like 25 Final Fours. So when we went in the WCC, that was a really good experience. We kind of took over the WCC and kind of surpassed both of those teams. And so I think that was a really good preparation for us. I think if the WCC hadn't has been as competitive, we would have struggled maybe a little bit more going into the Big 12. But we had already been a top 10 program, top 10 program. We had already played for a national championship going into the Big 12. So I think our players and our expectations of what it was going to take was really helped us with the background years that we had had. I also was able to take one of the best and most experienced team I'd coached into the first year of the Big 12. So that obviously helped a lot. It was really exciting to go to new places and new big facilities and have a lot more exposure for soccer, where the Big 12 is a really good soccer program. But we were chosen to finish first. So the expectation going in without even being in the Big 12 to finish first place in our first year, that was a little bit of pressure for us as well. But I thought our team did really well. The logistics were really tough. Soccer is a Sunday sport in the NCAA. And so logistically, we had to do what no other teams in our conference did by playing Monday games. So imagine having to compete against a ranked opponent where you can't practice the day before. No other team in the country is asked to do that. So for us, a lot of those travel and those logistics were challenging, and we had to figure out some things. But I thought we did really well. We finished second place, had a chance to win it that first year, and then last year we finished 4th place, and I still felt with our young team we had a chance to do a little bit better. So we're super excited to be in the Big 12. Love the programs and the competitiveness. There's definitely a different athlete and level of competition in the Big 12 than in the WCC.
Awesome. Did you have a question?
Sure. You talked about a mental strength coach. What other type of roles does your coaching staff fulfill, and how do you keep them working as a group, a coordinated group?
Yeah, that's an important question. Doing this as long as I have, I couldn't be doing it if I didn't have such an amazing staff. I have 3 full-time coaches that assist me with all these players. You think of football stats and basketball stats. We have all those kind of stats as well that we have to maneuver around and figure out how to best utilize them, from every touch a player makes, where they go, what direction, what part of the field they're on. And so there's a lot of film, there's a lot of scouting, there's a lot of recruiting. And so just doing my best to kind of organize my coaches so they understand what their roles are, just like we do with our players. And I think just knowing that we all have a unique vision to be the very best in the country, representing the best university, but also representing more than just a university. And I think that's what we all take really seriously. We know that we're representing the church. We know that we're representing the Savior. We know that we're impacting and bringing a light to so many people. And that is, why we're out there trying to be so good. And I think our players come and play at BYU because they want to be a big part of that missionary work. We have fans all over the world, not just BYU fans, but soccer fans in general that I meet at all recruiting tournaments. I get parents that come up to me saying they watch our team, that they're their favorite team to watch other than maybe Florida State and North Carolina. And so I think for us, our coaches, we all have to have the same vision. We all have to be on the same page. We all have to have the same culture and same expectations that we expect from our players.
Awesome. Well, Jennifer, thank you for leaning in and trusting this. Hopefully it was beneficial. I learned a lot. It really blessed me and my life. So last question. Well, before I ask the last question, anything you would say about encouraging more support for this girls soccer team, or come to the games, buy the tickets, any way to experience the girls soccer the best?
Yeah, we have an amazing program, an amazing group of girls right now. Our program has probably been one of the most successful programs at BYU. We've been to 2 Final Fours in the last 3 to 4 years. We've been a top 10 team pretty consistently for the last 10 years. So we also have the best fans in the country because we have the #1 attendance in the country in Division I women's soccer out on South Field. So we do have tremendous support. And soccer is the biggest sport in youth right now, and obviously with our women's national team. And so just encourage you guys to come out and support the girls. They love what they're doing. They love representing BYU. They're great role models. If you have young kids or young grandkids, you have an opportunity to watch them, to follow them, to meet them. They are true inspirations to the youth of the church and to even those outside of the church.
Awesome. Well, last question I have for you, as you reflect on your time as a leader or a coach, how has being a coach helped you become a better follower of Jesus Christ?
I have had to rely on my Heavenly Father for a very long time. I remember when I was a coach, I was a club coach for 6 years before Title IX came in. I applied for the job not thinking that I would get it. I didn't have any Division I experience. I had coached the club team for 6 years, and we were very successful. And I thought, if they get it, maybe that's my path. I loved being a teacher. I loved working with young kids. And so I was just going to continue doing that and coaching high school. When I got the job, I remember the first year walking out at Southfield one night thinking, what have I got myself into? I was young, I was cheap, and no one knew anything about soccer at BYU except for me, I think. But Lou Wallace, Elaine Michaelis, who just passed away last week, and Ann Valentine believed in a young kid who loved soccer and loved BYU and gave me the opportunity to start the soccer program. And I had to rely daily on my Heavenly Father and the Savior for the strength and the confidence to do it. I didn't have any real experience, and I felt If I work harder than everybody else and just do the best I can, that's all that's expected of me. If it goes well, I'll keep doing it. If it doesn't, there's other plans and different roads for me. And I just feel like I've been blessed tremendously by support and people and tremendous success that doesn't even make any sense to me. And so I feel that this was the role that my Heavenly Father gave me. It was to lead this program over all of these years. I never expected to be a coach more than 4 or 5 years. I certainly would tell people I'm not coaching past 50, and that was 9 years ago. And so I just take it 1 year, 2 years at a time, and just feel like this is what I was meant to do. That's why I was put here on this earth. It's been hard. It's been a challenge, but also so many blessings along the way. And it's made me stronger. It's made me a better person. It's kept me on the straight and narrow for sure, knowing who I represent and what I stand for and what's expected of me. And so hopefully I can pass that on to the players and the people that I have the opportunity to work with, that our strength comes from our Savior and our Heavenly Father, and we can do all things through Him. And even if it doesn't go our way, there's still paths that He has plans for us.